Are you ready for a new adventure? Time to travel back in time, let's go! Are you ready for a new adventure? Let's learn about the past with Anna and Leo.
Hi friends! If you're looking for adventures with Anna and Leo, you're in the right place. We're excited to announce a new name with the same fun, educational stories you love. Each month, we'll be traveling back in time to discover a new tale from history. So without further ado, welcome to Unlock This, a podcast from Honest History, where we join our friends Anna, Leo, and Percy on adventures through time and uncover some really cool stories along the way. My name is William. I'm 6 years old, and I love learning about history, especially new stories that I don't hear about in school. I can't wait for today's story, and I think you're gonna love it too. So let's dive in.
Let's head straight to the vault today. I have an idea.
Hey, Percy, can you unlock the door for us, please? What was your idea, Leo?
I wanted to learn more about the American Civil War, and there was someone I read about who lived during that time. I was hoping we could learn more about her.
The Civil War? Huh.
Did you ever learn about it in school?
I did. It started in 1861. At that time, the country was divided into two sides. There was a Union, or the North, on one side, and the other side there was the Confederacy, or the South.
That's right. The Confederacy was made of 11 states. These states decided to leave the United States because they didn't agree with the direction the country was going.
That's because many of the southern states supported slavery and didn't think that the federal government should be allowed to stop it. At that time, many Black Americans were enslaved, which meant that they were forced to work without pay.
And the North was against slavery. By the 1860s, the U.S. had expanded west and new states were joining the country. States like California, Minnesota, and Kansas. The North wanted slavery to be banned in these new states, but the South thought each state should decide for itself. And in 1861, a war began that would last for 4 years.
Percy said the American Civil War is one of the bloodiest battles in U.S. history. Is that true?
Yes, it really was a huge moment in American history.
Leo, you said there was someone you wanted to learn about from this time. Who was it?
Her name was Susie King Taylor. When she was just a teenager, she worked as a nurse for one of the regiments called the 1st South Carolina Volunteer Infantry Regiment. This regiment fought for the Union and was made up of Black soldiers who had escaped enslavement.
That sounds like a really interesting story. I'd like to learn about her too. Percy, is there anything in the vault that can tell us more about Susie King Taylor?
Whoa, it looks like Percy is running around collecting objects.
I guess there are a few things in the vault about her. This should be interesting.
He's put them all into that box over there. Should we go have a look?
There's an old map in this box. It looks like it's a map of Georgia. And Percy is pointing to this part right here. It says St. Simons.
There's another old document in here too. The words "a proclamation" are at the top. And there's a glass bottle with something inside. It looks like some kind of a dried plant. What do you think?
There's a label on it. It says sassafras. I wonder what it all means.
You know, the last time Percy showed us a lot of objects, we ended up traveling more than once.
And I have a feeling that's gonna happen again on this adventure too. Get ready, Leo!
It looks like we've arrived.
There's some cabins over there. I wonder if that's where people live.
There's a path, too. Should we follow it to see where it goes?
Yeah, maybe we can find a town or a sign somewhere that will tell us where we are.
We must be somewhere Susie lived. Hopefully we can find her too.
Do you know where she grew up?
In Georgia. She was born there in 1848, and like many black children of that time, she was born into slavery. Susie's family lived and worked on a farm owned by the Grest family, but her childhood was a bit different from her friends. Mr. Grest allowed Susie and her siblings to live with their grandmother in Savannah, Georgia.
That wasn't common for that time?
No. Normally, enslaved children would have been forced to work at the farm or home. But Susie and her siblings were able to live more freely with their grandmother in the city. And while Susie lived with her grandmother, she was able to do something very few enslaved children were allowed to do.
And what was that?
Learn to read and write. Did you know it was illegal to teach enslaved children how to read and write?
No, I had no idea. That's so unfair.
Because of it, children had to learn in secret. Susie and her siblings went to a bucket school. The schools were called this because the kids had to hide their books in buckets so they wouldn't get caught.
Because it was illegal for them to learn how to read or write.
Exactly. Susie's grandmother sent her to a school run by one of her friends. By the age of 11, Susie had already learned everything her grandmother's friend could teach her, but she wanted Susie to keep learning. Susie got lessons from a white neighbor and other family friends who agreed to teach her in secret.
So Susie would have been very well educated.
Yes, she liked learning, and she could use her skills to help her family and teach others.
Hey, Leo, look! I think this path leads to a beach. I can see the ocean.
You're right, and it looks like there's some soldiers on the beach. I recognize those uniforms. Those are Union soldiers.
Do you see that boat on the shore? There's a crowd of people around it. It looks like some of them are getting into it.
Let's see if we can sneak onto that boat.
We'll just squeeze in back here. Oh, thankfully no one can see us. Where do you think this boat is headed?
Maybe we're going to that larger ship out there. Do you see it? I think it's a gunboat. It must belong to the Union Army.
Hey, Leo, while we're rowing, maybe you can tell me more about Susie.
Let's see, where were we? Well, in 1862, Susie moved back with her mother to the Grest farm. By that time, war had already broken out. As Union soldiers moved into the South, it was becoming easier for enslaved people to escape. When Susie was 14 years old, she left with her uncle to find freedom. They escaped to one of the islands off Georgia's coast, where they stayed for a couple of weeks.
Do you think that's where we are? On one of those islands?
That's what I was thinking. And look, we just arrived at the gunboat. Everyone is climbing aboard. Let's go too.
That man over there looks very official. He must be the captain of the gunboat. He's talking to one of the passengers who was on the boat with us.
And what's your name? Where do you come from?
My name is Susie Baker, sir. I come from Savannah, Georgia.
That's Susie. We found her. Before she married, her last name was Baker.
Susie Baker. Can you read and write?
Yes, I can.
Anna, this is an important moment. After the captain learned about Susie's skills, he mentioned it to a few other officers. Then, the Union Army asked her to be in charge of a school. During the day, she taught children, and at night, she taught adults. She was the first black teacher to openly educate African Americans in Georgia, which means she didn't have to teach them in secret. And her school was on St. Simon's Island.
Like the place on the map. Remember? The one in the vault?
You're right, which means we might be going somewhere else very soon.
Here we go.
Hi friends, are you enjoying today's episode? I'd like to take a quick break from the story to tell you about another great place to learn about the past. Honest History creates magazines and books for kids that are filled with fun stories and activities that bring history to life. From pirates to spies to great inventions and so much more, you'll learn about interesting people, places, and events from around the world that made history. Created for kids ages 6 through 12, you can sign up and receive new adventures delivered straight to your doorstep every quarter. Just visit honesthistory.co. That's honesthistory.co to sign up today. Oh, and here's a special offer for our podcast listeners. Use code UNLOCKTHIS for 10% off. Again, that special code is UNLOCKTHIS. Okay, let's get back to the story.
It looks like we've arrived at some kind of party. Look at all the people.
They're gathered around that stage over there. There's a man holding a piece of paper. It sounds like he's saying something to the crowd. Let's get closer so we can hear.
That on the first day of January in the year of our Lord 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then, thenceforward, and forever free.
That man must be reading some kind of new law or rule.
Percy said he's reading something called the Emancipation Proclamation.
Of course, the Emancipation Proclamation. It was an order from President Abraham Lincoln. On January 1st, 1863, he said that all the people who had been enslaved in the Confederacy were free.
So that means Susie and her family were free, along with all the other Black Americans who had been living in the South. That's why they're having a party.
The proclamation also meant that Black soldiers who were fighting for the North were now officially part of the Union Army.
Everyone here is so happy. And do you smell that? They're cooking something. It smells amazing.
They're having a barbecue to celebrate. Susie was here on this day and wrote about it. Look, I think I see her over there.
It was a glorious day for us all, and we enjoyed every minute of it.
Yes, I'm hungry too, Percy.
Luckily for you both, I remembered to pack some snacks this time. Do you like peanut butter, Percy?
Percy loves peanut butter, but he also said we should think about that proclamation a bit more.
Oh, yes, the old document in the vault. It said a proclamation at the top. That must have been a copy of the Emancipation Proclamation.
Leo, I think you're right because it feels like we're about to travel again. Hold tight!
This seems very different from the last place we were. It sounds like there's a battle nearby.
This must be another part of Susie's story. Look at all those tents over there. Is this some kind of camp?
I think this is the camp of the 1st South Carolina Volunteers. It was a regiment of Black soldiers who fought for the Union.
Susie was a nurse for this regiment, right?
Yes, officially Susie served as a laundress. She washed clothing and cleaned for the army, but we know that Susie actually spent most of her days tending to the injured soldiers. During this time, she married her husband, Edward King. He had signed up to join the regiment too, and for the next 4 years, Susie dressed wounds, cleaned uniforms, and also taught the men how to read and write.
Uh-oh. That sounded close. Where did it come from?
Over there! It's Susie! Don't worry, Anna. She's just testing the gun. Susie was also in charge of cleaning the muskets. She would always take them off to make sure the cartridges were dry. She also learned how to take the guns apart and put them back together.
It looks like she finished cleaning the muskets, and now she's headed over to that tent. Should we follow her? This must be some kind of hospital tent. These men don't look too good. Are they sick?
I think so. Do you see all the bumps all over their skin? I think they have smallpox. Many soldiers became sick with this disease during the war, and many died from it too.
Was it contagious? Is she gonna catch it?
It was very contagious. Soldiers were supposed to get a vaccine to stop them from catching smallpox, but many didn't receive it because they were rushed off to battle. Thankfully, Susie had gotten vaccinated, which likely stopped her from getting sick. She also said that she prepared a special tea and drank it before she saw a sick patient. She was exposed to many deadly diseases like cholera, malaria, and typhoid, but she never got sick and she was never afraid to care for the soldiers.
That's incredible. I wonder what was in that tea.
I think it was sassafras tea. Her grandmother taught her to make it. Historians aren't sure if it actually helped, but Susie believed it did.
Sassafras? Like the glass bottle we found in the vault. It had that dried plant inside of it. She must have used something like that to make her tea.
You're right, Anna. And I think we're about to travel again.
We're back in the vault. I gotta say, that was a lot of traveling. I think I'm gonna have to sit down for a while. What was that, Percy? He wants to show us something else. It's a book. She wrote a book?
Yes, she did. It was a story about her experience during the Civil War. Because many years after the war, Susie moved to Boston and worked for the Women's Relief Corps. This was an organization for men and women who served during the Civil War. When Susie talked to these people about her life, they kept telling her to write it down. Finally, she did, and her book came out in 1902, over 30 years after the war. Susie King Taylor was the first and only Black woman to publish her experience of the Civil War.
So thanks to her book, we can see the war from her perspective, and we know so much more about her life.
Exactly. Historians are very grateful that Susie wrote down all of her memories.
And I'm grateful too. Today we had an amazing adventure. It was a lot of traveling, but still amazing. Thanks, Leo.
Welcome back. That sure was a great adventure. I don't know about you, but I'm gonna tell all my friends about this amazing story. That's all for now. But if you want to learn more, be sure to check out my favorite magazine for kids, Honest History. There's a ton of stuff to learn in each issue, and I love the fun activities and questions. Bye! This episode was narrated by Nikki and JoAnn Schinderle and written by Heidi Coburn. The production was read by Robot Pirate Media. To learn more about Honest History, visit us at honesthistory.co and follow for updates on social media.